Every single month, more than 50 AI models just vanish from existence, and nobody's talking about it. But here's the thing. The ones that survive aren't always the smartest. They're the ones that figured out how to be useful in a way that actually matters to real people. And today I'm going to walk you through why the AI graveyard keeps getting fuller and which models are actually built to last. So first, let's get real about what I mean by an AI model dying. I'm not talking about the AI gaining sentience and deciding to retire, obviously. I'm talking about models that get released with huge hype, maybe a fancy research paper, maybe even some venture capital backing, and then just stop. They disappear from public access. The servers shut down. The developers move on. The GitHub repos get archived. It happens constantly, and most people never even notice because they were never using it in the first place. The scale is actually wild. We're talking about hundreds of models released every year across different companies, research labs, and startups. OpenAI releases updates. Meta puts out open-source models. Anthropic drops new versions. Google's got half a dozen different model families. And that's just the big players. There are thousands of smaller labs, indie researchers, and companies trying to build the next big thing. Most of them fail. Most of their models end up in what I call the graveyard. But why does this happen? Why do models die so fast? There are actually a few really clear reasons, and understanding them tells you a lot about where AI is actually headed. First one, compute costs are brutal. Running an AI model at scale is expensive. Like, genuinely expensive. You need servers, you need electricity, you need people maintaining it. If your model isn't generating enough revenue or research value to justify that cost, it's going to die. That's why a lot of startups release a model, get some attention, and then quietly shut it down 6 months later. The math doesn't work. They either get acquired, pivot to something else, or just fold entirely. Second, the models get outdated incredibly fast. We're in this crazy period where AI is improving so quickly that a model released 6 months ago can feel genuinely old. If you release a model that's 95% as good as GPT, but costs more to run, why would anyone use it? They wouldn't. So your model dies not because it's broken, but because something better came along and made it irrelevant. That's actually happening right now with some of the models that seemed amazing just a year ago. Third, the barrier to entry keeps getting higher. To release a competitive large language model, you need massive amounts of compute, tons of training data, and serious engineering talent. That's expensive and hard. So the field naturally consolidates toward companies that can afford it. Smaller players get squeezed out. Their models die not because the models are bad, but because they can't compete with the resources of OpenAI or Google or Meta. Fourth, a lot of models are just solving the wrong problem. Someone builds an AI model for a specific use case, and it turns out nobody actually wants that use case solved. Or they solve it, but the market's too small. Or they solve it, but a bigger company notices and builds their own version. The model dies because there's no sustainable reason for it to exist. And then there's just straight-up failure. Some models are built on shaky research. Some have bugs that can't be fixed. Some get released before they're ready. Some are abandoned because the team that built them got bored or moved on to something else. So what does survive? What models actually make it past the first year or two? Obviously, the big ones, GPT-4, Claude, Gemini, Llama. These survive because they're backed by companies with unlimited resources and a clear business model. They can afford to keep improving them, keep running them, keep investing in them. They're not going anywhere. But there's a second category that's actually more interesting. Open source models that solve a real, specific problem. Llama survives because Meta released it for free and the community built around it. Whisper survives because OpenAI's committed to it, and it's genuinely useful for transcription. Stable Diffusion survived because it's small enough that individuals can run it on their own hardware. These models survive because they either have a committed backer or because they're useful enough that people will keep them alive themselves. There's also a third category, models that are specialized. Models that don't try to be everything to everyone, but instead get really good at one thing. A model trained specifically for medical diagnosis, or code generation, or financial analysis. Those can survive because they have a clear, defensible use case. You can't just replace them with a general-purpose model, because the general-purpose model isn't good enough at that specific thing. And then there's the wild card, models that become infrastructure. Models that get embedded in so many workflows and so many products that shutting them down would break too many things. Those are basically immortal, at least until something better comes along. Here's what really matters, though. The graveyard is going to keep getting fuller. We're going to see more models die faster. Because the competition is getting fiercer, the improvements are getting slower relative to the effort needed, and the consolidation is accelerating. In a few years, I think we're going to look back and realize that the period where anyone could release an AI model and have it stick around was incredibly brief. We're in the tail end of it right now. So if you're thinking about building an AI model or using a specific model for something important, here's the real lesson. Survivability matters. You need to think about whether the model you're using is actually going to be around in 2 years. Is it backed by a company that cares? Is it solving a problem that's actually valuable? Is it small enough and efficient enough that people will keep it alive? Or is it just another model that's going to end up in the graveyard? The AI graveyard is real, it's growing, and it's going to reshape how we think about AI sustainability. And if you want to actually stay on top of what's happening in AI, not just the hype, but the real story of what's surviving and why, you should subscribe. I break down these kinds of shifts every few days, and they're the things that actually matter for how AI is going to shape the next few years.